My name is Ava Ramirez, and I never set out to become a millionaire. All I wanted was for my parents to believe in me. Growing up in a tiny apartment in Miami, I watched them sacrifice everything for their dream, running a boutique travel agency. They dreamed of booking luxury escapes for wealthy clients, but most days, they barely kept the lights on. No matter what I did, it never seemed enough. A 97 on my chemistry exam? Why not 100, my mother would say, not even looking up from her laptop. Sophia Gonzalez got a perfect score and she's already taking AP Calculus? That constant comparison followed me into college. When I earned a full scholarship to Columbia, my father's reaction was a shrug. At least it's not a community college. When I graduated with honors in 2016, they didn't even attend the ceremony. They were meeting a client about a luxury Caribbean cruise package. I understood their obsession. Paradise Travel wasn't just a business, it was their identity. They had clawed their way from handing out brochures at airports to owning a small office downtown, but their fixation on breaking into luxury travel left no space for anything else, especially for their average daughter. After graduation, I made the decision that, in their eyes, sealed my failure. Instead of joining their agency, I took an entry-level role at a private aviation startup in Los Angeles. A receptionist? My mother nearly screamed. We didn't send you to college so you could answer phones. It's not a receptionist job, Mom, I tried to explain. It's business development. Same thing, my father cut in. You're fetching coffee for people who actually matter. What they didn't know, what I couldn't tell them, was that I had a plan. The company, Aerolink, was building a platform to make booking private jets as simple as ordering a rideshare. The potential was enormous. 6 months later, I wasn't answering phones, I was leading client acquisition. Within 2 years, at 28, I became the youngest VP in company history. I lived on 4 hours of sleep, closing deals with CEOs and athletes, learning everything about private aviation. Still, I told my parents nothing. When they called, I'd say, still at that little company, because I needed this to be mine, my success, not theirs. I wanted to prove to myself and to them that I could win without their validation or connections. By 2023, Aerolink was valued at $1,200,000,000. And me? I held equity, bonuses, and a network that most people dream of. Yet, to my parents, I was still their secretary daughter. Until last month, when a Fortune 100 client chartered a Gulfstream for a multi-country tour, and I boarded that jet as the deal-maker, not the passenger. The same client my parents had been chasing for years. That moment felt like a quiet victory. But I had no idea the bigger one was yet to come. Their dream had always been to serve the elite. Mine? To become one of them. And that day, cruising at 41,000 feet, I finally stopped chasing their approval. I didn't need it anymore. Then came the day that changed everything. I was in my office, not a cubicle, but a corner suite on the 27th floor overlooking downtown Los Angeles, when my assistant buzzed me. Mims, Ramirez Paradise Travel just called. They want to schedule a meeting. They're representing a client interested in private jet services. My heart stopped. Paradise Travel, my parents' agency, was reaching out to Aerolink. After years of dismissing my career as fetching coffee, they were now trying to work with my company. He specifically asked for the COO, my assistant continued. Should I tell them Mr. Holt is out of town? I leaned back in my chair, a slow smile forming. Mr. Holt wasn't just out of town. He'd retired 2 months ago. The board had appointed his successor immediately. Schedule them for tomorrow morning, I said evenly. Do you want me to tell them who they'll meet? She asked cautiously, aware of my history with my parents. Absolutely not, I replied, voice calm but resolute. Then, after a pause, and Emma? Make sure the champagne in the executive lounge is properly chilled. I have a feeling we'll need it. That night, I barely slept. My penthouse in West Hollywood was quiet, but my mind wasn't. I stared at the ceiling, replaying tomorrow in my head. Would they finally be proud when they saw what I'd built? Would they apologize? Or would they try to spin the narrative, claiming their tough love pushed me to succeed. Then it hit me. It didn't matter anymore. I wasn't the desperate daughter craving approval. I was Ava Ramirez, Chief Operating Officer of Aerolink Aviation. And tomorrow, they'd finally meet the woman they once called a failure. Little did I know, the meeting would hold more surprises than I expected. The next morning, I arrived early, every detail intentional. My charcoal gray power suit fit like armor, my makeup sharp yet understated, my confidence unshakable. If they thought they were meeting some assistant, they were about to learn just how wrong they'd been. At 9:55 IEMM, Emma's voice crackled through the intercom. Your 10 o'clock is here. Your parents, plus a Mr. James Whitmore. I froze for a split second. James Whitmore? The billionaire tech investor my parents had been chasing for years? This wasn't just a meeting. This was the golden ticket they'd dreamed about. Send them to the executive lounge, I instructed smoothly. I'll join them in 5. Through the glass walls of my office, I watched them step into Aerolink's executive lounge, a space dripping with elegance, floor-to-ceiling windows, Italian leather chairs, handcrafted tables, and a bar stocked with rare vintages. My parents looked almost comically out of place. Mom in her simple floral dress, Dad in an outdated suit with fraying cuffs. I stood, smoothed my jacket, and walked toward the door. For years, they believed I was serving coffee. Today, I was about to serve them the truth. Ice cold, with champagne on the side. But James Whitmore, he belonged. Tall, distinguished, dressed in a casual jacket and tailored slacks that probably cost more than my parents' annual vacation budget, he radiated the easy confidence of the truly wealthy. I drew a slow breath and stepped out of my office. I'm so sorry, my mother was saying as I approached, her tone dripping with practiced charm. The CEO must be running late. I'm sure they're very busy. Actually, I said, stepping into the lounge, my heels clicking against the polished hardwood. I'm right on time. The look on their faces was worth every sleepless night. My mother's champagne flute slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. My father's jaw hung open. James Whitmore merely raised an eyebrow, amused. Ava, my mother stammered. What are you doing here? Where is the CEO? You're looking at her, I replied calmly, crossing the room with unhurried confidence. Extending my hand toward Whitmore, I said, Ava Ramirez, Chief Operating Officer of Aerolink Aviation. It's a pleasure to meet you. His handshake was firm, his smile faint but knowing. The pleasure's mine, though I'm getting the sense there's quite a backstory here. Impossible, my father sputtered. You're just You can't be. The COO? I finished for him, already moving behind the marble bar to pour fresh champagne. The soft pop of the bottle seemed to punctuate the tension in the room. I was appointed 2 months ago, after leading Aerolink's expansion into Latin America and tripling our client base in under a year. Whitmore's brows shot up. That was you? I read about that in Forbes. Brilliant strategy. Partnering with tech founders to normalize private aviation? Genius. My mother's expression shifted from shock to something calculating. I could practically see the gears turning in her mind, crafting a narrative that placed them as the visionaries behind my rise. Oh yes, she said quickly, her voice now honey-sweet. We always knew Ava would achieve something extraordinary. That's why we encouraged her to start at Aerolink. We saw potential in the company. Mom. My tone sliced through the performance like glass. Don't. Silence fell. Even the city hum beyond the windows seemed to fade. Whitmore's amused gaze flicked between us, clearly savoring every second of the unfolding family drama. For 3 years, I said evenly, setting my glass down with deliberate care. You told relatives I was just a secretary. You laughed at every promotion, dismissed every success I fought for. We were trying to motivate you, my father protested weakly. No, I countered, my voice sharp and certain. You were trying to control me. You wanted me in your agency, living your dreams, not mine. And now that you see what I've built without you, you want to rewrite history. Whitmore raised his glass slowly, a smirk tugging at his lips. Well, he said lightly, this is going to be an interesting partnership meeting. I smiled thinly, lifting my own glass. Oh, Mr. Whitmore, You have no idea. If you want to see what happens when the deal closes and the twist that left everyone speechless, make sure you hit subscribe and turn on notifications. The next chapter is one you won't want to miss. James Whitmore cleared his throat. Perhaps I should give your family some privacy. No need, I said, straightening my jacket. My voice was calm, but inside adrenaline hummed like static. This is a business meeting after all. You came to discuss private aviation services, correct? Let me show you what AeroLink can offer. I slid my tablet from the sleek leather folio and opened the presentation. The screen lit up with our signature interface. Streamlined, elegant, the future of private travel. But my parents weren't ready to surrender control. What happened next would shift our family dynamic forever. As I began walking James through AeroLink's capabilities, my mother's voice sliced the air. Ava, she snapped, the sharp edge of desperation unmistakable. This is our client. We brought him here. You can't just— Actually, Mrs. Ramirez, James cut in smoothly, his tone leaving no room for argument. I believe your daughter is exactly who I need to speak with. His gaze shifted back to me, warm and calculating. I've been following AeroLink's innovations for months. Your app-based booking system is game-changing, but I had no idea the COO was so young. I said, locking eyes with him. But experienced. I've personally overseen more than 10,000 private flights and built our high-net-worth portfolio from the ground up. My father, who had been silent until now, finally spoke, his voice cracking. If you're really the COO, then why didn't you tell us? Why let us think you were some assistant? I turned to him, calm, steady. Would you have believed me? Or would you have called me a liar? Like when I made honor roll? When I got into Columbia? When I graduated with honors? Enough, my mother hissed. You're embarrassing us in front of Mr. Whitmore. No, James interjected, his tone firm but amused. Your daughter isn't embarrassing anyone. In fact, she's impressive. He looked at me with a spark of interest. I came here today thinking I'd book a few private jets for my tech conferences. But now, I'm thinking bigger. AeroLink might be the perfect partner for my company's entire fleet. My parents froze, their shock almost palpable as James continued casually. How does an exclusive contract sound? 200+ flights annually? Minimum. Maybe more. My pulse spiked, but my expression didn't flinch. This was monumental. Our largest deal to date. We'd be honored, Mr. Whitmore, I said smoothly. Shall we review the details in my office? As I rose, my mother made one final attempt to reel me back in. We should all discuss this together, as a family. Mom, I said firmly, meeting her eyes without hesitation. This isn't a family discussion. This is business. And in this building, I allowed myself the smallest, coldest smile. I'm not your disappointing daughter anymore. I'm the chief operating officer of a multi-million-dollar company. James Whitmore followed me to my office, leaving my parents standing in the executive lounge. Through the glass walls, I could see their reflections in the floor-to-ceiling windows, smaller somehow, diminished by the weight of reality. 2 hours later, after signing the largest contract in AeroLink's history, I returned to find them still there. My father sat hunched forward, his elbows on his knees, his head buried in his hands. My mother stood silently by the window, staring out at the glittering Los Angeles skyline as if searching for answers in the haze. Ava, my father said finally, his voice low, almost fragile. We were wrong. Yes, I said quietly, setting my folder on the bar. You were. My mother turned then, her face pale but her eyes softer than I'd seen in years. Can you forgive us? I walked behind the bar and reached for the chilled champagne. 3 glasses gleamed under the soft pendant lights. I poured slowly, the bubbles rising like tiny sparks, and then turned to face them. I don't know, I said honestly, handing them each a glass. But maybe we can start over. Not as the disappointed parents and the fulfill your daughter. As equals. Their fingers brushed mine as they took the glasses. For the first time in years there was no tension in the gesture, only something fragile, tentative. To new beginnings, I said, lifting my glass. They echoed me softly. and in that quiet toast, I saw something new flicker in their eyes. Not judgment, not calculation, but respect. As we stood there, sipping champagne under the glow of the city lights, a realization settled over me like a warm tide. Success had never truly been about proving them wrong. It was about proving myself right. That I could carve my own path, live life on my terms, and succeed without compromise. Hours later, as dusk melted into the glitter of night, I sat back in my office, signing the final paperwork for James Whitmore's exclusive contract. The weight of the pen in my hand felt symbolic, a line drawn between who I had been and who I had become. My assistant appeared in the doorway, carrying a towering bouquet of white orchids and blush roses. "From your parents," she said softly, setting it on the credenza. I slipped the card from its envelope. The message was simple. "We're proud of you." For a long moment, I just stared at those words. Then I smiled, set the card gently on my desk, and turned back to my work. After all, respect was nice. Flowers were beautiful, but I had built this empire with my own hands, and now I had a company to run. Before you go, I want to hear from you. What would you have done in my place? Would you have let your parents back into your life, or walked away after years of doubt and criticism? Tell me in the comments. I really want to know your perspective. I can't lie, this journey wasn't easy. There were nights I cried myself to sleep wondering if they'd ever see me as enough, and for a long time I thought proving them wrong was the finish line. But here's the truth I learned the hard way. Success isn't about revenge. It's about freedom. The kind you feel when you no longer need anyone else's approval to know your worth. If you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever felt small in someone else's eyes, remember this. You don't have to convince them. You don't have to shrink yourself to fit into the version of you they can accept. Build your life the way you see it. Let your results speak so loudly that their doubts fade into background noise. I hope my story reminds you that it's okay to take a different path, even when the people you love don't understand. Someday they might respect you for it, but even if they don't, you'll still be standing in your own power. If this story hit home for you, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter of my journey. We've got bigger twists coming, and I want you with me every step of the way. Because trust me, the best part of this story isn't over yet.